Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. That night, as Michael lay in bed, he thought about the two paths Evelyn's life could have taken. The long, unremarkable life as Brendan, or the short, vibrant life as Evelyn. There was no doubt in his mind which had been the right choice. Evelyn had packed more life, more love, more impact into her 45 years than most people manage in twice that time. She had lived with authenticity and purpose, touching countless lives and leaving a legacy that continued to inspire. As he drifted off to sleep, Michael felt a sense of peace wash over him. Evelyn's life had been a gift to him, to their children, to the world. And though he missed her every day, he knew that the choice she'd made had been the right one. In another reality, 79-year-old Brendan sat alone in his room, wondering about the road not taken. But in this reality, Evelyn's spirit lived on, in her art, in the lives she'd touched, and in the hearts of those who'd loved her. The next morning, Michael woke to find an email from a publisher interested in creating a comprehensive book about Evelyn's life and art. As he read through the proposal, he felt a surge of excitement. This was another opportunity to share Evelyn's story, to inspire more people with her courage and authenticity. Over the next year, Michael worked closely with the author, sharing stories and memories of his life with Evelyn. He dug through old sketchbooks, photographs, and letters, reliving their journey together. It was bittersweet, bringing both laughter and tears, but Michael knew it was important work. The book, titled 20 Years of Truth, The Life and Art of Evelyn Marsh, was released on what would have been Evelyn's 65th birthday. It became an instant bestseller, touching readers around the world with its honest portrayal of Evelyn's journey. Reviews poured in, praising the book's authenticity and inspiration, a powerful testament to living one's truth, no matter the cost. Evelyn Marsh's story reminds us that it's not the length of life, but the depth of it that matters. An inspiration to anyone who has ever felt out of place in their own skin. The success of the book led to renewed interest in Evelyn's art. Galleries around the world clamored to host exhibitions of her work. Michael found himself traveling more than he had in years, speaking at openings and sharing Evelyn's story with new audiences. At one such event, a young art student approached Michael after his talk. "Mr. Marsh," the student said, eyes shining with admiration, "I've been studying Evelyn's technique for years. The way she captured emotion in color, it's revolutionary." Michael smiled, touched by the young artist's enthusiasm. "Evelyn always said that art was about truth. She painted what she felt, not just what she saw." The student nodded eagerly. "That's what makes her work so powerful. It's like she's speaking directly to your soul." As Michael watched the student walk away, he felt a warmth in his chest. This was Evelyn's true legacy. Not just her art, but the inspiration she continued to provide, the lives she continued to touch. On a quiet evening at home, Michael sat in Evelyn's old studio, surrounded by her paintings and the memories they held. He picked up a small sketchbook, one he hadn't looked at in years. As he flipped through the pages, a loose sheet fell out. It was a letter written in Evelyn's flowing handwriting. The date at the top showed it was from just days before she passed away. With trembling hands, Michael began to read. "My dearest Michael, if you're reading this, it means I've moved on to whatever comes next. I hope you'll forgive me for the secrecy, but I wanted to leave you with these words. First and foremost, thank you. Thank you for loving me, for supporting me, for being my rock through every storm. The life we've built together has been more beautiful than any dream. I want you to know that I have no regrets. The choice I made all those years ago, to live authentically, even if it meant a shorter life, was the right one. In these 20 years, I've experienced more joy, more love, more life than I ever thought possible. Please don't mourn for me too long. Remember the good times, the laughter, the love, and know that wherever I am, I'm at peace. Continue to live my love.
Continue to create, to inspire, to spread kindness, and when you look at my paintings, know that a part of me will always be with you. All my love, always and forever, Evelyn."
Tears streamed down Michael's face as he finished reading. He held the letter to his chest, feeling closer to Evelyn than he had in years. "I love you too," he whispered into the quiet room. "Always and forever." As if in response, a gentle breeze rustled through the studio, carrying with it the faint scent of lilacs. Michael smiled through his tears, feeling Evelyn's presence all around him. In that moment, any lingering doubt about Evelyn's choice vanished. She had lived her truth, loved deeply, and left an indelible mark on the world. Her life, though shorter than some, had been lived to its fullest. As the years continued to pass, Evelyn's legacy only grew stronger. Art schools studied her techniques, psychology classes discussed her journey of self-discovery, and her story continued to inspire countless individuals to live authentically. On what would have been Evelyn's 70th birthday, a major museum in Paris hosted a retrospective of her work. Michael, now in his 80s, attended with their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. As he walked through the exhibit, surrounded by Evelyn's art and the family they'd created together, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. One of their great-grandchildren, a precocious 6-year-old named Lily, tugged on Michael's hand. "Grandpa?" she said, pointing to a self-portrait of Evelyn. "Was great-grandma Evelyn really an angel?" Michael chuckled, kneeling down to Lily's level.
"What makes you ask that, sweetheart?"
Lily's eyes were wide with wonder. "She's so beautiful, and Mommy says she made people's lives better. Isn't that what angels do?" Michael felt his heart swell with emotion. He looked at the painting of Evelyn, her eyes sparkling with joy and love, then back at Lily. "You know what? In a way, I think she was. She brought light and love into the world, and she helped people find the courage to be themselves. That sounds pretty angelic to me." Lily nodded solemnly, then hugged Michael tight. "I'm glad she was our angel, Grandpa." As Michael stood up, wiping a tear from his eye, he caught sight of their eldest son watching the interaction with a soft smile. "You okay, Dad?" he asked, coming to stand beside Michael. Michael nodded, his eyes still on Evelyn's portrait.
"You know, son, I've lived a long life. I've seen a lot of changes in this world. But the one constant has been the impact your mother made in her short time here." His son put an arm around Michael's shoulders. "She was one of a kind." "That she was," Michael agreed. "And every day I'm grateful for the choice she made. To live authentically, to love freely, to create beautifully. She packed more life into her 45 years than most people do in a century." As they stood there, surrounded by Evelyn's art and the family she'd helped create, Michael felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew, without a doubt, that Evelyn's choice had been the right one. Her life, though shorter than some, had been lived fully and truly. And her legacy continued to grow, touching lives and inspiring change. In another reality, an 89-year-old Brendan might be sitting alone, wondering about the road not taken. But here, in this reality, Evelyn's spirit lived on, in her art, in the lives she'd touched, and in the hearts of those who'd loved her. As the family left the museum that day, Michael took one last look at Evelyn's self-portrait. In the soft museum light, he could almost see her wink at him, that mischievous smile he'd fallen in love with all those years ago, playing on her lips. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." And as they stepped out into the Parisian evening, Michael felt lighter than he had in years. Evelyn's choice had given them this, a life filled with love, purpose, and beauty. A life that continued to inspire and change the world, long after she was gone. It was a testament to the power of living authentically, of embracing one's truth no matter the cost. And as Michael watched his family, the living legacy of Evelyn's love, he knew that her 20 years of truth had been worth more than a lifetime of hiding.
In the end, it wasn't about the quantity of years, but the quality of life lived within them. And by that measure, Evelyn's life had been immeasurably rich. As the years continued to pass, the world changed in many ways, but Evelyn's impact remained constant. Her art continued to inspire, her story continued to give hope, and her legacy lived on through the lives she had touched. On what would have been Evelyn's 80th birthday, a documentary about her life premiered at a major film festival. Michael, now in his 90s and using a wheelchair, attended with his family. As they watched Evelyn's life unfold on the big screen, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The film captured not just Evelyn's artistic journey, but the profound impact she had on the world around her. It featured interviews with artists she had inspired, individuals whose lives she had changed, and experts discussing the lasting influence of her work. One scene in particular struck Michael deeply. It was a recreation of that fateful night when Evelyn, then Brendan, had made her choice. The actress playing young Evelyn looked directly into the camera, her eyes filled with determination and hope. "I choose to live as who I truly am," she said, echoing the words Evelyn had spoken so many years ago. "Even if it means only 20 years. As the scene played out, Michael felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up to see their daughter, tears streaming down her face. "She made the right choice, didn't she, Dad?" she whispered. Michael nodded, his own eyes misting over. "She did, sweetheart. She absolutely did." After the screening, there was a panel discussion about Evelyn's life and work. Michael was invited to speak, and despite his age, his voice was strong and clear as he addressed the audience. "Evelyn used to say that life isn't measured in years, but in moments," he said. "In love given and received, in truth spoken and lives touched. By that measure, my wife lived a life longer and richer than most could imagine." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces hanging on his every word. "She knew her time was limited, but that only made her more determined to make every moment count. She loved fiercely, created passionately, and lived authentically. And in doing so, she showed us all how to truly live." As Michael finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, many wiping away tears. In that moment, Michael felt Evelyn's presence more strongly than ever, as if she were standing right beside him, beaming with pride. Later that night, back in his room at the assisted living facility where he now resided, Michael sat looking through an old photo album. Each picture told a story. Evelyn painting in her studio, playing with their children in the backyard, speaking at a community event, laughing with friends. A soft knock at the door interrupted his reverie. It was one of the night nurses, a kind young woman named Rachel. "Just checking in, Mr. Marsh," she said with a smile. "Oh, are those pictures of your wife? She was beautiful." Michael nodded, patting the seat next to him. "Come, sit. Let me tell you about Evelyn." For the next hour, Michael shared stories of his life with Evelyn. He told Rachel about their first meeting at the art gallery, about Evelyn's courage in living her truth, about the love and joy that had filled their years together. As he spoke, Michael felt a familiar warmth spread through him. This was Evelyn's true immortality, not just in her art or her public legacy, but in the stories shared, the memories cherished, the love that continued long after she was gone. When Rachel finally left, promising to come back another time to hear more stories, Michael settled back in his chair. He closed his eyes, picturing Evelyn as she had been in her prime, vibrant, passionate, full of life and love. "We did good, didn't we, my love?" he whispered into the quiet room, and for a moment, just a moment, he could have sworn he heard Evelyn's laugh, that bright, joyous sound that had always been able to light up a room. As sleep began to overtake him, Michael felt at peace. Evelyn's choice had given them a life of authenticity, of purpose, of deep and abiding love. It had been shorter than some, but richer than most could imagine. The following morning, Michael woke to the soft light of dawn filtering through his window. His dreams of Evelyn lingered, leaving him with a bittersweet ache in his chest. He reached for his glasses on the nightstand, his arthritic fingers fumbling slightly before grasping them. As he put them on, the world came into focus. His gaze fell on the framed photo beside his bed, a candid shot of Evelyn laughing, her head thrown back, auburn hair catching the sunlight. It had been taken on their 10th wedding anniversary, a day filled with joy and celebration. "Good morning, my love," he murmured, touching the frame gently. A knock at the door interrupted his reverie. "Come in," he called out, his voice gravelly with sleep. The door opened to reveal his granddaughter, Sophia. Her warm brown eyes, so like Evelyn's, crinkled at the corners as she smiled. "Morning, Grandpa. How are you feeling today?" Michael sat up straighter, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Better now that you're here, sweetheart. What brings you by so early?" Sophia crossed the room, placing a gentle kiss on his cheek before settling into the chair beside his bed. "I've got some news, actually. Remember that art scholarship in Grandma Evelyn's name?" Michael nodded, his interest piqued. The scholarship had been established years ago, aimed at supporting young artists who, like Evelyn, were dedicated to using their art as a form of self-expression and social change. "Well," Sophia continued, her excitement palpable, "I've been chosen to be on the selection committee this year, and I thought, well, I was hoping you might want to be involved too, to help choose the recipient." Michael's eyes widened, a lump forming in his throat. "Oh, Sophia," he said softly, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "I'd be honored." Sophia beamed, squeezing his hand back. "I was hoping you'd say that. The committee meets next week to review the applications. I've already cleared it with the nursing staff. They said we could use the small conference room here for you to look over the portfolios." As Sophia outlined the details, Michael felt a familiar spark of excitement. This was a chance to connect with Evelyn's legacy in a new way, to help shape the future she had always believed in. "You know," he said, interrupting Sophia's explanation, "your grandmother would be so proud of you. Taking on this responsibility, carrying on her work." Sophia's eyes misted over. "I hope so," she said softly. I want to do right by her memory, you know?" Michael nodded, understanding all too well. "You are, sweetheart. Every day, in ways big and small, you and your siblings and cousins, you're all living out the values Evelyn held dear: authenticity, creativity, compassion." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in thoughts of Evelyn. Finally, Sophia stood, smoothing out her skirt. "I should get going. I've got a class to teach. But I'll be back this afternoon with the scholarship materials, okay?" Michael nodded, squeezing her hand one last time before she left. As the door closed behind her, he let out a contented sigh. This was what Evelyn had always wanted for her legacy to live on, not just in her art, but in the lives of those she loved. He glanced again at the photo by his bedside. "Well, my love," he said softly, "looks like we've got some work to do." As the day progressed, Michael found himself filled with a renewed sense of purpose. He went through his usual routine breakfast in the communal dining room, a bit of physical therapy, a walk in the gardens, but his mind was buzzing with thoughts of the scholarship and the young artists whose lives it could change. In the afternoon, true to her word, Sophia returned with a stack of portfolios. She set them up on the small table in Michael's room, arranging them neatly beside a notepad and pen. "Okay, Grandpa," she said, pulling up a chair beside him. "Are you ready to dive in?" Michael nodded, reaching for the first portfolio. As he opened it, he was immediately struck by the vibrancy of the artwork inside. Bold colors, daring compositions, it reminded him so much of Evelyn's early work. "This one," he said, pointing to a particularly striking piece. "Tell me about the artist." Sophia consulted her notes. "Ah, yes, Javier Morales. He's a first-generation college student from Los Angeles. His artist statement says he uses his art to explore themes of identity and belonging." Michael nodded, studying the painting more closely. He could see the conflict, the struggle for self-expression in every brushstroke. It was raw, honest, everything Evelyn had always valued in art. They continued like this for hours, poring over portfolio after portfolio. Each one told a different story, each artist bringing their unique perspective and passion to their work. Michael found himself deeply moved by the talent and courage on display. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, Sophia stretched, stifling a yawn. "Maybe we should call it a day, Grandpa? We can pick this up tomorrow." Michael nodded, reluctantly setting aside the portfolio he'd been examining. "You're right, of course. But I have to say, Sophia, this has been... well, it's been wonderful. Thank you for including me in this." Sophia smiled, leaning over to kiss his cheek. "Thank you for sharing your insight, Grandpa. Your perspective is invaluable." As she gathered up the portfolios, Michael leaned back in his chair, a sense of contentment washing over him. This was Evelyn's legacy in action, nurturing new talent, encouraging authentic expression, making space for diverse voices in the art world. "You know," he said as Sophia prepared to leave, "your grandmother once told me that art was a way of speaking truth to the world. I see that truth in every one of these portfolios." Sophia paused at the door, her eyes shining with emotion. "That's why this scholarship is so important," she said softly. "It's not just about the money. It's about recognizing that truth, celebrating it, nurturing it." Michael nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "Exactly," he managed to say. As Sophia left, promising to return the next day, Michael turned his gaze to the window. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, a stunning sunset that seemed to set the world ablaze. "Oh, Evelyn," he whispered, "if only you could see this. The seeds you planted. They're still growing, still blooming. Your 20 years of truth. They're still changing the world." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.